What's up guys, welcome back to my channel Anime Fiction. I'm back at the new episode of Naruto Conquer the Mysterious World Part 7, and if you did enjoy this video, give this video a like, and if you're new on my channel and like my content, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more crossover fictions. Now let's begin this new video.
Chapter 14. 5 days passed while the new tamers trained with their partners and strengthened their relationships. During these 5 days, Naruto became close to all of the girls, learning more about them as they got to know him better. Even if some of them didn't love him, their friendship deepened, and it wasn't difficult to understand what would happen if everything went right. It was also a very enjoyable event for them all. Naruto couldn't deny that these had piqued his interest. At this rate, he might be falling into the ocean of pleasure, and he didn't want to stop. Morrigan and Eve's natural effects had made him used to such a situation without his noticing. Aside from that, he had spent time simply conversing and enjoying himself with his buddies. His family had been ready to attack the Akatsuki and exact retribution for their losses, but first, they had to locate the base. Naruto took note of it but put it on wait until he was ready. Asura's training went well, and he grew more mature with each passing day. But Asura wasn't the only one who developed with time, as Naruto's power grew at a rapid pace. His abilities had been locked by the seal that every mutant received, and now that it had been removed, his abilities were swiftly returning to their proper level with his training. Because of the seal, he had been stuck at one point for years. He didn't know how to break it, and he didn't have the power to do so. Many seals in the world were too powerful for even his full strength, but the seal on children was created by Ultimate Digimon, Taumon. Fortunately, it was gone, and he could now get in shape quickly. He only needed at least a year to gain his War Arc power, and he'd be able to engage in the world and aid Asura's Digivolution. Getting to Champion wasn't difficult for any good tamer, but getting to Ultimate wasn't, since you had to kill a lot of Champion Digimon or a dozen Ultimate Digimon. That wasn't enough because you also have to meet the data and material standards. Fortunately, most Digimon had that recorded, so the tamer only had to follow the instructions. The Mega, on the other hand, was always a source of contention due to its wide and harsh circumstances. Fortunately, Asura's condition was only a large number of fights and acknowledgement from Gankumon. That was the usual procedure, but sometimes the Digimon's emotions would burst and connect with the tamer, allowing the evolution to begin. It was an unusual occurrence, but it did occur. That one didn't interest Naruto because it required luck, which was one of his pet peeves. But he was excited to meet Azulongmon for the Bio-Merge program. Azulongmon was a digital sovereign and guardian of the digital realm who liked humans, albeit he was mostly neutral. It was the Digimon that had the program for Bio-Merge, which it only granted to a few tamers. You had to pass some sort of test in order for it to happen, and it was a highly powerful gift because it allowed the Digimon and the tamer to merge, allowing the Digimon to get more powerful each time and sometimes even attain a high evolution. This was something Naruto had always desired because it would allow him to immediately approach Mega and lend his power to Asura, thereby surpassing his prime. With just so much, he would be able to compete with the Royal Knights. He wouldn't be the strongest, but he'd be one of the most powerful beings alive. Naruto didn't forget about his squad, and he planned to help them flourish as well. He hadn't told them about his plan, but he intended to make them the youngest tamers with a Mega. The current youngest tamer with a Mega is 20 years old, therefore it took them 4 years to get there. Naruto planned to complete it in 3 years. After 5 days, Naruto decided it was time for Asura's first kill. This was a vital step that all tamers had to do before entering the digital world. This step was made for reasonable grounds, and Naruto concurred. It was the same technique that ninja used in the past, and abolishing it had resulted in many deaths because the ninja had no experience killing other people, so they held back or were paralyzed when they killed. There were clearly a few instances where they relished the sensation of being showered with blood. In this reality, it was for the same purpose. Tamers lived with Digimon, and Digimon were not mindless creatures. This made it difficult for many tamers to actually kill other Digimon at first, and even resulted in death. There were good and bad Digimons, just as there were good and bad humans. Even without the evil versus good debate, there were borders and fights within the digital realm. Getting into fight outside of the cities was common, therefore a tamer had to be prepared for such an encounter. The association assisted with it and checked on the tamer's mental health before granting them access to the digital realm. But the tamer wasn't the only one who had a problem. The tamer's Digimon needed to go through this process as well. Tamer's Digimon, unlike normal Digimon, would have no experience in the wild and hazardous environment. They would be accustomed to friendly Digimon, which would reduce their hostility. So, like the ninja in Naruto's world, these partner Digimon could hold back and be slain as a result. Another issue is that when the Digimon kills for the first time, it may be distracted by the data of the prey and ambushed by another Digimon. The Digimon partner's mental health was also checked, much like the human. Some Digimon may become bloodthirsty as a result of the excessive killing, and those had to be put down at times or they would wind up killing their mates. Even though it was the most vital and thrilling job, being a tamer was a risky job. Naruto and the rest of the party had arrived, and Young had arranged everything for them. They were used to fighting weak rookie Digimon, but this time it was a true Digimon. The association was not wicked, and Naruto was not someone who made compromises on these matters, thus the Digimon were some evil creatures from the Dark Zone. Young was looking young and cheerful these days. She had become much closer to the group and could now confidently call them her friends. There was an age difference, but they were all very mature, so it didn't matter. I want to make a final confirmation. Are you sure about this? This is an irreversible step that usually takes longer than a week. Most people would take a month to be sure. Any of you could develop problems as a result of this ordeal. My suggestion would be to gradually get used to it by combating the fake ones, Young said in front of the group of excited tamers. Rika stood calmly behind Luna, certain that this was merely a formality for her. Henry was worrying over Tesla since he was worried that his Digimon was kind. He would have taken a long time, but the team needed to enter the digital world in 2 days. He had to do something for the squad and cheer on his friend. Takato, like Arthur, was ecstatic about the war since he was a simple man who classified people into bad and good. He had no qualms about dispatching the nasty Digimon. Except for the guy losing his mind to bloodlust, Arthur was a fighting Digimon with an aggressive demeanor in battle. That was a regular occurrence among Guilman and Dragonkinds. Naruto was unconcerned because he had everything under control. He had perfectly trained Asura and assisted his troops. They might need to take the entire day off, but that would be no problem. Takato, Tesla, and Arthur were the only 3 who could have issues. Takato's confidence was misplaced, and he was not going to like what he saw. Young, thank you for your concern, but we are sure. We have a very deep bond with our partners now, and you already know the values, so there is no need for us to hesitate. Believe in us, we will get out fine, right guys? Naruto gently responded to her concerns and called out to the people in the back. Yeah. Takato, Arthur, Tesla, Henry, and Asura exclaimed, while Rika and Luna silently nodded. Young, we can do it. Have faith in our abilities, Rika said as she moved up to Naruto and handed her piece. They didn't have to do it because they had previously been allowed, but Young was their advisor and buddy. It would be irresponsible to dismiss her. If they treated her like she was wind, she might become unmotivated and distant to their concerns. She had proven her usefulness and assisted them all in obtaining information over the course of 5 days. Naruto had obtained the records for the various locations and goods he required with her assistance. Look at Arthur. Does he appear to be crying because some evil thing died? He doesn't appear to be going berserk either, just look at him, Takato said as he held Arthur and offered him as proof. Takatoman is correct. We can easily handle this battle and return to celebrate with some cake. Yum yum, Arthur aided his master. Takatoman, really? Rika asked, her eyes judging him. What's wrong with that? I've always wanted to be a Digimon or be called like this by one. It's my dream. Stop looking at me like that, Takato said as he hugged Arthur. Young couldn't help but chuckle at the scenario. Looking at them, she realized she had been fretting too much. They all appeared to be excited and confident. Thank you for considering my opinion. I approve of it. Please enter with caution and don't let your guard down. Young nodded and moved to the computer on the side where she could activate the battle zone for the tamers. Each of them vanished inside their battle arena one by one. Naruto and Asura appeared in a wilderness with high temperatures of 80 degrees Celsius and wind carrying dirt. It didn't make it any cooler, but rather made it hotter. High and very low temperatures were common in the digital age, and this was nothing new. There were areas that were entirely engulfed in flames, with numbers topping 20,000. There was nothing around them but an open wasteland with cactus and typical lizards or snakes. Because the digital realm often directly duplicated organisms from the real world, those animals existed as well, but were usually employed as feed for Digimon weaker than Rookie. Their goal was in this dreadful spot, and what a target it was. Naruto gave the sky a kiss. They assigned him a specific target. It was one of the worst Rookie Digimon to face, and facing it even if you were an ultimate tamer was not a good idea. It had to be a Caramon. Caramon was a Devour Digimon that evolved from Sumamon. Its body had grown larger, and with its large mouth, it could consume far more data than Sumamon. Because it consumes over 100 megabytes of data per second, the data was discarded as soon as it entered Caramon. Because of its upbeat disposition, it saw its harmful behaviors as part of its game. This Digimon was never alone himself. It was a digital tragedy that traveled in massive numbers. It wreaked havoc everywhere it went. It was followed by its champion and ultimate forms, while all Digimon and tamers worked hard to prevent it from achieving its mega form, which would result in massive deaths on both sides. This Digimon's megaform was known as a world catastrophe since it could clone itself indefinitely, producing thousands of mega to overwhelm the globe. The megaform was stronger than Wargreymon, indicating that it was not a weak mega. Caramon was a Digimon with a normal adult-sized round head, huge eyes, and mouth. It had 2 long antennas protruding from its head, as well as 2 long slender arcs with enormous hands. The section below the head consisted of only 8 tentacles with sharp claws at the ends. This Digimon was never given to a tamer since it was too hazardous and had a destructive personality. The Royal Knights kept the situation under control, else it may have become a problem for everyone. How do you feel about this foe? Naruto inquired as he approached Asura. It was not their first war without his active participation, but it was their first battle in which they would not back down. When it came to killing, even Naruto had few kills on his record, and he felt awful about them. He never became accustomed to it. His body didn't like it when he went that far, so he experienced goosebumps as he killed and felt the need to cry for what he had done. That was true, but Naruto was able to keep it under control and not reveal it to others or let it impact his fighting abilities. It reminded him that even if the victims were slime, he still saw them as human beings. I am honored to be able to fight such a powerful foe. I expected it to be a mundane task that would be over in a second. Asura had grown a lot in these days, and he had developed ways to sound like a confident warrior from his interactions with people and Digimon. His fighting abilities and demeanor have matured. Training with Ryu had also pumped him up, and he was eager to improve his strength. He was excited to beat up the original Genkumon and was generally on board with his wacky ideas. I meant about the killing. This is a real Digimon, not a fake one. How do you feel about him? Naruto inquired again, as Asura failed to grasp his point. Asura had been dueling and spending time with various Digimon, thus this could be a difficult point for him. I feel like I'm seeing that insane clown, I feel like punching that grin of his face, Asura muttered as he remembered the movie. He had developed a dislike for clowns. Naruto laughed as he patted his back. He adored his coworker. This infant had only been alive for 5 days, yet he had quickly become one of his most significant companions. Go get him, warrior, Naruto said as he pushed his back and backed away. Master, don't worry. I'm not sure what I'll feel after this, but I'm sure I won't let you down, Asura said to Naruto as he approached his rival. He had learned a lot in these 5 days and had grown into a formidable close combat magician. Naruto intended to teach him about weapons later. He now only uses his head to throw weapons, explosives, smoke bombs, and poison bombs, as well as a shield on his back. Asura smirked as he started sprinting towards his foe while the Caramon was finally let loose, looking at the Digimon that would fodderize Candleman in nature. The beast burst out laughing at the sight, and its voice was agonizing to hear. Even though Asura didn't have ears, he could feel the laughter, but it was muffled by his anatomy. Are you my new friend? Are you? Caramon said as he moved from side to side, giggling as he flew up and sprayed purple energy shots from his mouth. Crazy giggle. Bug blaster. Asura didn't answer because he had gone into serious mode while fighting, and with 3 shots coming at him, he jumped to the side and flung 5 kunai at his opponent. They were fashioned of a rare metal that Asura infused with chakra. He, like Naruto, could make chakra after receiving info from Naruto. Asura was gifted with these abilities, and Naruto predicted that he would eventually activate the 6 paths mode. When he first began using chakra, a yin-yang symbol appeared on his back, and his power increased. They shot through the air like guided missiles, but Caramon laughed like a happy child as he executed airborne maneuvers to avoid them. While doing so, he launched lasers from his enormous hands at Asura. Unlike Asura, the opponent was simply having a good time. It had no idea what morality was. This was how Caramon expected it to behave. Nature was the only thing that existed. Asura used his shield to deflect the attack, while his flame head attacked with fire arrows. These were superior to the kunai because he could guide them within a specified range. They came from different directions after flying about, and there were 4 of them. Asura tackled Caramon when he plummeted down. "Ha ha ha ha, you got me, it was fun." Caramon yelled cheerfully as he pushed Asura with his tentacles while blocking his fists with his enormous hands. Asura threw a fireball in his face, while Caramon threw an energy ball. Both exploded, but Asura landed unscathed because to his armor. "Ha ha ha, that hurt. That hurt, but I'm having so much fun. Are you having fun?" Caramon flew towards him, burn scars on his face, before turning to the side and sucking in the surrounding data to mend and grow. It happened too quickly, and Asura was caught off guard. Caramon had healed and doubled in size within 10 seconds of Asura's strike. Asura fashioned a short fire lance and hurled it with great force while augmenting it with fire chakra. The flames instantly reached 600 degrees and flew like a bullet at the target. "I don't like the burning, okay." Caramon fired lasers at the lance before sucking the data from it. "You like the fire, don't you? Here it comes." Caramon shook with excitement before flying up into the sky and shooting fire arrows at him. He could reproduce those things by devouring the data. Asura grimaced, realizing he couldn't shoot near the lips. As the flames drew in on him, Asura used fire manipulation to control them all, using some of his meager chakra reserves. The flames were united, and Asura ate it all to boost his flame powers. Asura's body, which had a flame head, blazed up even more. Because it was a hot zone, this place was great for him. Clap, 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 wow, so cool. How about this? Caramon applauded enthusiastically at Asura's antics and dove down while releasing lasers, flying around Asura to surround him. While wearing his armor, Asura focused on him and kicked him at the proper time. Caramon flew to the side as a result of the impact, and Asura boosted his speed with chakra to follow him before kicking him again from underneath. Asura went to his knees and jumped high using chakra as a booster while his wax spilled through and formed a lance, and Caramon screamed in pain mixed with joy. The wax lance was boosted by chakra, and Asura used it to puncture Caramon's head. "Ah, it was fun. Let's play again," Caramon grumbled as the lance shredded his head to smithereens. Caramon transformed to data as Asura fell on the ground. Asura stepped forward and stretched his hand to grab it as he looked at it. It was the only genuine way for him to develop. He required to repeat such conflicts numerous times, eating the data of his fellow Digimons or digital equipment. It had been a horrible beast. But now that he was out of the fight, Asura was in a bad mood. Caramon was nothing like the creatures seen in movies. He had acted like a small child. There was no murderous intent. He only wanted to have fun, and he looked at him like Arthur did to the finish. His sight was unclouded. Asura was distraught by the circumstance. He didn't enjoy what had just happened, and as a result, he was hesitant to ingest the data. Caramon might return if he doesn't consume it. Master. Asura didn't know what to do because he was in pain and didn't know why. He had never met Caramon. They weren't close, and he was attempting to murder him. But why was it so painful? His flame head flashed with uncertainty as he turned to face Naruto. Naruto had been watching the fight from the sidelines because Asura was winning easily. Caramon was powerful, yet it couldn't compete with any good tamer's Digimon. Candleman would not stand a chance in the natural world before being devoured. It would have been difficult if there were 5 of them because Karamon excelled in group tactics, but one-on-one was not difficult. Regardless of its strength, Naruto could see why Young had chosen this Digimon for him. It was like a youngster and acted like one. Many Digimon would behave like children in the wild, and some would have families. They may have been your buddies prior to the war, but circumstances may have forced them to fight to the death. Life wasn't always easy, and it could be quite unpleasant at times. Even though he was uncomfortable after the combat, Karamon had no malice and only wanted to have fun and spend time with Asura. He didn't seem to have covered everything. He had been so focused on the giant Digimon that he had overlooked these situations. Asura, you haven't done anything wrong. This feeling is normal because you are associating Karamon with a child, and you like children, so it's natural for you to feel this emotion, Naruto said. It will take some time, but you will be able to separate them from these monsters. Karamon is not like you or a regular infant. It is unfortunate, but this Digimon exists just to destroy. This Digimon was created by a virus that deletes all files and has been doing so since then. Many people have tried to tame it, but it does not change and continually tries to murder the tamer and other Digimon. You don't have to feel sorry for such beings. It's unfortunate, but such beings must die or the rest of this lovely world will crumble. Do you understand? Naruto asked softly after regaining his composure. That Digimon was disturbing, yet from a logical standpoint, you need to kill them if you don't want to perish. Asura hugged Naruto after hearing the explanation, and he now understood why he felt this way. He had been playing with small children and liked them. His mind ended up confusing Karamon with the children because of the way he acted. He was not guilty, but his presence was wrong. Some Digimons were simply unlucky, and their source code was incorrect. Leaving it alive would mean it would go on to kill others. It would kill his pals, as well as other individuals and children. The entity was unaware that it was causing harm and didn't care. Asura let go of Naruto and reached his hand into the data, thinking about those thoughts. Asura could feel his body becoming stronger as he reached level 10 after absorbing Karamon's info. He had been at level 1 the entire time, whilst his opponent had not. Asura felt incredibly well and at ease while devouring the info. It was natural for a Digimon to ingest data, so he felt perfectly at ease. His size expanded gradually as his level increased. He had grown to be taller than Naruto. Digimon grew in size as their data rose. Therefore a typical Agumon may be 1 meter tall while level 100 Agumon could be 20 meters tall. With this in mind, Asura's height was estimated to be between 30 and 40 meters. This was natural, however at lower levels, most Digimon would shrink their bodies rather than move around with such big dimensions. Because of this, there were no gigantic novices in most sectors of the digital world. It was just preferable to keep the size small. Naruto used his Digivice to shrink Asura back to normal size. It was pointless to become large at this point, because compressing meant greater power. Asura looked to Naruto and said, "I feel better now, master. Thank you. There is no need for thanks between partners, and this is what I am here for. Trust in me, and we will soar," Naruto said as he stepped up to Asura and slapped him on the back. "Let's get going, we're done here." Naruto and Asura were finished, but the Digimon companion would need some time to acclimatize to these new thoughts and emotions. It was the explanation for the time lapse between their departure and this exam. Takato and Arthur arrived in a dark woodland when Naruto and Asura were fighting. The only source of light was the moon, which shone brightly above them. The trees were tall and eerie. There was a chilling breeze that created terrifying noises. Millions of dark eyes watched them from the depths of the forest, while the two stood just outside of it. Overall, it was one of the scariest places any of them had ever seen, straight out of a horror film. Takato imagined a witch, ghost, or monster emerging from the jungle. When Arthur heard the roar and saw the eyes, he began to shake. "Takato-man, this place is scary." Arthur disliked scary places and had yet to overcome his apprehension about them. It was a problem, but he forgot about it as he went into fight. His fighting spirit took precedence over his anxieties. "Relax, Arthur. I'm here with you. There's just some rookie Digimon that we need to beat, so cheer up and let's go meet him." Takato didn't like this place either, and it was his first time there. Young knew Naruto and Asura wouldn't feel anything from these areas, so she only handed them a Digimon to face. However, Takato and Arthur got the whole package to help them because the digital world was full of terrifying things. People had died as a result of shock and fright. If you say so, Takato-man, I'll go ahead and smell out the enemy. Arthur swallowed before agreeing and looking out into the jungle. Taking a smell, he only detected one person within, which was trapped in place due to the software. This way. Arthur focused onto the attacker and began racing, mostly forgetting his anxiety. He was the type that was so focused on one subject that he almost forgot about everything else. When a combat begins, a Guilman's ferocity will be shown, no matter how cowardly it appears. Takato trailed after his buddy while triggering the Digi barrier linked to Arthur. Unless Arthur lost the battle, this barrier would remain in place because it was linked to the companion Digimon. It was standard protocol to activate the barrier while approaching a battlefield because an opposing Digimon could catch the tamer off guard. Takato had his barrier, but he needed to make it a habit or risk being killed for his error. His abilities were only effective until the rookie level, beyond which he couldn't battle the Digimon directly without putting himself in grave peril. Fighting a weak champion alone was conceivable, but the risks of dying were exceedingly high, so it would only be necessary when your Digimon companion was down or your partner was a beginner. Takato didn't think they'd accomplish it because Naruto wouldn't be that insane. They emerged from the difficult terrain and came in a clearing where the moon was lighting up the region. It was the size of a typical beginner Digimon fighting arena, and in the center was their target, frozen because the battle hadn't begun. It was a Dracmon, of course. Dracmon was a pale-skinned vampire, imp Digimon who wore a black mask with red and green eye markings. A pair of eyeballs with matching irises were embedded in its palms. It had wings, but they were linked by a gold trinket and hung around its waist. Dracmon was a Digimon that was undead. It was the most nefarious Digimon in the dark area. It would meet the task unflinchingly for the purpose of a joke, even if it came with some risk. This Digimon, like Demi-Divinemon, was highly nasty and dangerous. It worked for Grand Dracmon, the Vampire King. It sucked other Digimon's blood and may infect them with a virus. It possessed mind control skills and could brainwash humans and Digimon. It has the ability to take control of weaker beings and force them to fulfill its malevolent aims. It was demonic Digimon who relished wicked activities and thought friendship unpleasant. Because it was a good actor, all tamers were told to be wary of this small creature. Despite these issues, Dracmon was a Digimon that could be tamed, unlike Caramon. Takato could see all of the information on the Digivice and that it was level 20. Not weak and extremely powerful for a level 1 Digimon. Guilman was naturally stronger than Dracmon, but only if their levels were not too far off. His buddy, fortunately, was trained and equipped. He had trained hard with Arthur in these few days, learning how to fight with his body rather than his innate instincts. He was armored, and his tail was a lethal sword. He had little firearms and bombs on him. Takato might give him wings and make him humanoid as additional help. But this was a one-on-one war because it was uncommon in the digital world and the partner needed to know how to fight without assistance. Arthur, are you ready? This guy is bad news. Don't listen to his words and don't look into his eyes. The eyes are on his hands, don't look at them, okay. Takato wrapped his arm around Arthur's shoulders and offered him a simple warning. Arthur could see Dracmon's eyes as he gazed at him. As a virus buster, his innate instincts were heightened. I understand, Takato-man, and I feel really good. Can we begin? Arthur smiled as his eyes transformed from normal to bestial dragon. He was on the verge of gouging his opponent's neck. Takato saw why Naruto had cautioned him about meeting a nightmare soldier in a combat for the first time. His spouse had an aggressiveness problem, which you needed to cure before proceeding with the evolutions because each evolution exacerbated the problem. If the tamer isn't careful, Guilman could grow extremely hostile and lose his mind. Each Digimon was born aggressive, thus all tamers spent time in the rookie form bonding with them and teaching them to control it. Remember, don't act like a monster. What is our goal? Takato reminded him and inquired eagerly. King of all knights, exclaimed the king. And, is the king a monster? He is a divine being of grace and skill. All right, now go kill him, Takato said, pushing Arthur forward while standing back with his Digivice. it was difficult for him to simply observe. Arthur stepped nearer, his gaze fixed on Drachmon and his tail swishing from side to side. He had grown strong enough to carry 100 kilograms of armor without difficulty. It didn't even feel like a burden anymore, as his physical limits had expanded as a result of the constant training and recovery. At this point, he could lift up to 300 kilograms, but that would increase over time, and benching 1,000 kilograms would be nothing out of the ordinary for him. His eyes were drawn to the defenseless neck, and he felt compelled to chomp on it, causing his foe to bleed and consume him. Arthur shook his head, and the opponent came to life. Before taking in his surroundings, Drachmon shook his body and bounced in place. "Ooh, a freaking Guilman," Drachmon shouted, holding his face and dancing in place until his gaze fell on Takato. "Che, a slave of the humans, how distasteful can you get? You are a disgrace to the Royal Knights," Drachmon said, looking at him with contempt. As Drachmon riled him up and touched his pride, Arthur frowned and hissed. He was a dragon, and dragons have a lot of pride. Without further ado, Arthur let forth a roar with his dragon spirit, inducing dread and hesitancy in his adversary. "Nah, nah." Drachmon mumbled as he smirked and suppressed his hearing the moment Arthur appeared to be going to growl and release dark syringes at him. While his claws were on fire, Arthur charged forward and easily dispatched the onslaught. Drachmon noticed him approaching and released his wings before taking flight, followed by a dark shriek. It was jagged and unappealing. To avoid being confused by the black cry, Arthur responded immediately, and his ears were shielded by his armor. Arthur launched a fireball at his adversary. Drachmon managed to avoid the fireball and landed on a tree branch because he couldn't fly for too long without consuming energy. "Hey, aren't you strong? Why don't we band together and get out of here? My boss is Grand Drachmon, you know." "Oh, you're a tamer Digimon, so you'd have no idea who that is. He is the king of vampires and a being stronger than the Royal Knights and Demon Lords. He has the most territory in the dark area and he may make you stronger if you serve him. Yes, my master has a dark version of the Royal Knight serving him. You may be another one, and can you really trust a human to get you there?" Drachmon asked, his silvery tongue glinting. He was telling the truth about everything. Grand Drachmon was simply amazing. Fortunately, he wasn't interested in wreaking havoc. Because he was one of the oldest beings alive, many top tamers had come to visit him and learn about the secrets of the digital world. He lived before any of the demon lords, and his power was unrivaled in a one-on-one battle. I am no one's slave. Arthur will become king of all knights, and your master will be just another target for me to defeat. Now die." Arthur shook his head and fired several fireballs with his Gatling gun. Drachmon was caught off guard by the attack and was shot by bullets as he flew to evade the fireballs. His wings were ripped, and he plunged into the ground, howling in agony. "It hurts, you little bastard," yelled Drachmon as he extended his hands and launched an illusion ray. Eye of Nightmare casts a spell from the wicked eyes on its palms, causing people who look into it to have Drachmon totally control their hearts. Arthur had already closed his eyes and relied on his sense of smell. He could smell the blood and his aggression was escalating as a result. Arthur crashed into Drachmon like an armored vehicle, gouging him with his horns. Arthur's tail moved and stabbed into his side as he charged a flaming ball, dragging him along. Drachmon screamed in agony as his insides were realigned and he began to bleed from the internal. "I am sorry. I am sorry. I beg you, please let me go. I won't do anything bad. I will be your slave, please." Drachmon begged him to let him go, but Arthur didn't listen and his tail dragged the opponent of his horns, and he let unleash the fireball at point-blank range. "Ah!" Drachmon shouted in terror as the fireball fell on his face, and he continued to cry until the majority of his body was severely burned. The body landed a few feet away, and Drachmon attempted to crawl towards Takato, but his throat was scorched. Takato was horrified by the spectacle and closed his eyes while Arthur was still in the battle zone before stepping on the foe's back and piercing his head with sharp claws. With the demise of the Digimon, Arthur let out a triumphant yell and consumed the data without hesitation. His level immediately increased to 15, and he swelled in size. More. Arthur shook his head as his digital hazard began to shine. Takato raced at him and yelled angrily, "Arthur, It wasn't the first time he was on the verge of losing it, but this time was different. Takato collided with Arthur, aided by his armor. As he was tackled, Arthur was pushed to the side and scowled at the target. Takatoman, sorry, Arthur said as Takato's digivice shone to help his buddy out of his rage. He still had to deal with the dragon's fury and greed. The desire for violence and data had nearly fully triggered it. It's okay, it's not your fault. We'll get through this, okay? Takato grinned as he held Arthur after deactivating the armor on both of their bodies. He proceeded to hold Arthur while shrinking him with the digivice. What he had just witnessed appalled him. He had never imagined that slaying an evil Digimon could be so terrifying. He wanted to stop Arthur, but he had turned aside like a coward. He was to blame, but he was too afraid to look. He was disgusted with himself. To make matters worse, he was terrified of what might have happened to Arthur. He'd seen movies of Guilliman going crazy, which were terrible, but he trusted Arthur, and now he'd almost witnessed it for himself. He was concerned about both. Is he capable of killing Digimon? Is he willing to risk Arthur going crazy in the digital world? Should he ask Naruto to let him go for a while? Takato, on the other hand, was terrified and concerned that his companion was not faring any better. His actions terrified him. He had almost attacked Arthur, and the screams had stayed with him. He'd just slain a Digimon who begged for compassion. It was a prey item. It was heinous. But it felt awful. Those screams were nightmare material. He had transformed into a creature from a horror film. He was terrified and hurt. Takatoman, it hurts so much. I don't like this, Arthur cried out in misery, tears streaming down his cheeks. He clung to Takato and refused to let go. He was terrified of what he was about to see. He didn't want Takato to be afraid of him and abandon him. Don't cry, Arthur. I'm here for you. You're making me cry, so smile. Smile like always, we've won, Takato said, feeling agony from hearing his words hurt. He had been worried, so his spouse must have felt even worse. He couldn't stand the torture any longer. It was resonating with his partner through their relationship, exacerbating the situation for both of them. Takato couldn't stop crying when he saw him cry. He hugged him tighter and kissed him on the cheek to calm him down. Following Takato, there was the chilly duet. Luna and Rika approached the battlefield with poise and grace. They arrived in wide grassland, a lovely environment with lovely smells, views, and wind. It appeared to be an ideal location for a picnic. They located their target in this location. Violet Elecmon is a Pokemon. Elecmon, Violet, was a Digimon mammal. It was an Elecmon that became a virus species. It deftly used its tails to hit the enemy due to its indiscriminately cruel and disagreeable disposition. Elecmon, Violet, looked like a skunk with 9 tails, crimson eyes, and long ears. The coloring was blue-violet, with a white underbelly and yellow markings. This wasn't a Digimon as nasty as Dracmon or as devastating as Caramon. It was slightly crooked but rarely evil. The typical Elecmon enjoyed playing pranks, but this version carried them too far, resulting in injuries that may be permanent and, in some cases, death. It was a curious and intelligent creature who lived in a gang with other Digimon who shared similar characteristics. Edamon, an ultimate Digimon who enjoyed fights and pranks, was one of the Digimon they followed. Violet Elecmon could be neutral or very wicked, while Edamon could be either. It also signified they were brave enough to pursue such a creature and weren't afraid to get into conflicts. Nonetheless, it was not a test for Luna. Rika and Luna, in contrast to the other three, were cold-hearted. Young was confident that this team would be trouble-free, despite her reservations about Asura and concerns about Naruto. Being wise and mature did not imply being able to tolerate the slaughter of sentient beings with intelligence. Rika's family possessed this feature and was suitable for assassination, as their forefathers were formerly assassins. Killing people or Digimon she deemed targets was effortless for her. The only trouble occurred when one of her pals became a target. Luna was also a combat species that specialized in resolving minor issues for the royal knights and king. It was a natural murderer with a limited emotional range. It developed feelings over life but, except in rare situations, was never disturbed by them. The only thing that may cause her such a worry is if its master was hurt or wounded. Young had nothing to test them with because she knew the low-level tests would be no problem for Rika, and she couldn't just use a powerful Digimon to create a situation in which Rika had to face off against a friend or family member while believing they were genuine. That would be just too brutal. She'd lose her job. She hoped that would never happen to any of them. It was the worst scenario anyone could be in because the tamer was usually forced to kill their loved ones or die holding back. According to the Digivice, it was just level 20. She then obtained the information required to carry out the mission. It was only a wild Digimon that fooled around, tortured and killed other Digimon with its pranks. There was nothing particularly noteworthy about it. It was just a regular wild Digimon that she'd have to kill on a regular basis to assist Luna develop. It was natural for Digimon to chase each other down in the same way that normal animals did in the human world. This was true for practically all Digimon, though many of them would quit once they had become civilized after many years of survival. There was a distinction to be made between Digimon in cities and Digimon in the wild. The wild Digimon were weaker because they followed their instincts. In most cases, the city Digimon were more civilized and powerful than the wild Digimon. Digimon required data in order to become stronger, and killing other Digimon was the best supply of this data. It was the reason for the lack of peace in the digital world because this world order was created and no one could stop it unless they chose to go against the natural order, King Drazel and all his forces, as well as all the bad species. Digimon could consume any type of data, therefore collecting data from the world was an option, but most Digimon, unlike Keramon, lacked the ability to turn it into usable data. Keramon was a scourge because of it. It ate away the planet and had the potential to erase everything. This Digimon's final evolution was a mid-level Mega, not very powerful, but with abilities that made it the worst kind of foe. The Royal Knights, or Sakuyaman team, made certain that none of this occurred. Even digital sovereigns like Baihumon would hunt them down to maintain the balance while satisfying his appetite for bloodshed. Digimon could also feed on data provided by the human world, although this was excessive given the amount of Digimon that existed. Data collection would pose enormous problems in the human world. It was the digital age, not the medieval period. When Digimon began devouring data in the human world, a great crisis ensued, necessitating the presence of guardians to prevent such tragedies from occurring again. Digimon couldn't go instinctively either, so they were born in vast numbers to always fill up space according to the program. Except for a few Digimon like Susanumon and Apocalypse, King Drazel possessed the data for all Digimon, while the tamer Digimon were produced with the help of celestial Digimon such as Seraphimon, Ophanimon, Cherubimon, Dominimon, Angemon, Clavis Angemon, Rossielmon, and a mythical holy kind named Valdermon. Because it was an object blessed by mighty Digimon, tamer Digimon were naturally stronger and could digivolve faster with the help of the Digivice. Luna, finish him. Rika said as she walked back and sat nonchalantly on a small boulder, as if she wasn't about to slaughter an intelligent human. It was this trait that made the individuals in her family exceedingly dangerous, and she reminded Naruto of the Sasuke of this new planet. She was fixated. She was tough. She was the shadow to his light. Naruto could see how they would have ended up together if Sasuke had been a girl. Except for his family, he loved Sasuke the most, while Sasuke valued him the most. Sasuke had little interest in anyone else yet knew everything about him. Without saying anything, Sasuke could see right through him and take action to help him. Naruto could never perform the dark things that his work demanded of him, so Sasuke took it upon himself to carry that darkness for him. He'd put a lot on the line for Sasuke, and his soul brother had done more than enough to return that devotion after the war. Naruto had made light of it at times, and Sasuke had not denied it. Returning to Luna, she had learned a lot in these few days and demonstrated her superiority as a battle species. She was the easiest to train out of the entire group because she was talented, whereas the others had to work really hard to achieve the same outcomes. Tesla, like the others, needed to reach his next form in order to become a capable fighter. Luna was dressed in silver armor and had her sights set on the adversary. Luna improved her body and speed by channeling energy from within her body and creating an illusion using pheromones. She vanished from where she was standing and dashed for the target without hesitation. Elekmon simply sat down and began emitting electricity to protect his body. It wasn't his battle, and Luna might have been his first Renamon, but he wasn't stupid. He took a defensive position because every humanoid race was trouble. This was not his first encounter with humans. He had before encountered weak tamers and attempted to fool them, only to be trapped. He was far more vicious and dangerous than the average Elekmon. His electromagnetic abilities were likewise enhanced. He wanted Renneman and Rika just by looking at them. If he was tamed, he may readily evolve. That was common knowledge in the wild. Devour the tamer and his equipment, and you will almost certainly transform directly. His fortune was shining brightly for him. Elekmon didn't realize this was a regulated area and assumed it was merely a territory in the digital world. When Luna saw that the enemy was defending, she jumped and took out many shurikens, which she threw at the target. Normally, a Renneman would use leaves, but Luna was armed with real weapons that grew stronger when combined with her abilities. Storm of Diamonds Elekmon was influenced by the illusion, so it looked like a petal storm and was rather lovely. He didn't believe his eyes and could smell the metal. Elekmon rolled to the side, releasing lightning darts at Luna in haste. Luna shot to the side while throwing a kunai charged with the skill, using the grappler on her arm. Elekmon was caught off guard and was kicked in the $1. He yelled in agony and begged for compassion. He was someone who tortured others, but he couldn't bear much pain himself. Normal Renneman would play with their enemies and gradually kill them, but Rika had other ideas, therefore Luna was a no-nonsense fox. Rika and Luna were unaffected by the screaming. They had nerve training in her house, and it was far worse than this scene. Luna ignored the remarks and didn't care as she bounced towards her adversary for a quick strike with her phantom flames. Luna punched Elekmon from beneath his chin, sending him flying, with a fist coated in blue flames. The tail then struck him directly in the neck with a quick strike. Luna drew a short sword from her belt and impaled him to the ground, killing him. It was a quick combat because the antagonist wasn't fit for Luna and wasn't powerful enough to damage her. Luna took the data without hesitation. "I am finished, Master," Luna said as she turned around and proceeded towards Rika. It was adequate, but next time don't stop for such weaklings and kick them from the start. It took more steps because you used Diamond Storm in response to his defense, rather than going ahead with the power paw. Rika answered as she stood up. She had a tiny smile on her face, but she was a rigorous tamer, criticizing when she detected a flaw. Luna nodded, indicating that she grasped the message. She was not depressed or hurt. This was her nature, and Rika's nature was the best fit for her. "Understood, Master, I will do better next time." "Alright, let's go. We'll need to help the boys because I doubt they won't be crying after this." Rika smirked as she twirled her sunglasses and glued them to her shirt. "Why would they be crying?" "Because they are soft-hearted, they will end up associating the targets with something they already know." "I see, that is an illogical choice." Luna nodded and followed Rika. Young predicted that the combat will go as planned. She didn't give her a tougher opponent because it wasn't truly a battle test, but rather a character test. Rika and Luna were immediately qualified as adventurers, while Takato was placed on hold to assess his mental health. Naruto was allowed since he did not appear to be impacted by the scene, whereas his partner immediately reverted to normal. Finally, Henry was put on hold due to Tesla. With a calm expression on their faces, Henry and Tesla entered the battlefield. Tesla refused to carry Henry since he didn't want to do so when they were on the battlefield. The sudden frigid temperature and the wind-filled snow forced them to quiver involuntarily before the armor regulated their body temperature. They had arrived in one of the digital world's chilly zones. It had no marks, so Henry couldn't know, and it was most likely a poor imitation of the real thing. The temperature has dropped to -70 degrees Celsius. The ground was solid ice coated with snow, making it difficult to move, and the constant wind blew snow into their eyes. They were fortunate to have heat vision and could use it to pinpoint their target. In this terrain, Henry and Tesla were compelled to use their powers. Young had put him in a perilous situation, but he could see why. He had forgotten to train Tesla in such a challenging environment. Because the digital world was unpredictable, even a location famed for its gorgeous spring-like vibe could find itself blanketed in snow for no apparent reason or due to fighting taking place. Looking forward, they both noticed the opponent. Gabumon Noir. The Digimon Black Gabumon was a reptile Digimon. Its fur was created by collecting Geruruman viral data. When stripped of its fur, it transforms into a terrifying creature. Its genuine appearance was kept hidden. It covered its face beneath the pelt because it was an abomination on the inside. If Black Gabuman lost its pelt and became possessed by its hideous nature, it would transform into an eldritch horror. Black Gabuman was a brown-eyed white-skinned lizard with a black coat and white markings. It had a black horn protruding from the top of its head and a yellow belly with distinctive white patterns. Unlike the usual Gabuman, who was lovely, this one was rather malicious and had a nasty tendency of killing lower beings. It tortured other Digimon severely, even forcing them to kill their companions in order to survive. It was one of the strongest rookie Digimon in these chilly locations, and a normal Gabuman would usually lose to it in the wild because to its aggressiveness. One of its particular moves was to remove its mask slightly and frighten other beings. The sight would paralyze someone who wasn't used to seeing disgusting things. The opponent's level was 20. Henry was composed, and he never showed signs of weakness so that his partner might draw strength from him. His vulnerability reflects on his partner. "Tesla, are you ready?" Henry inquired of his diminutive companion. The adorable little bunny dog, who barely reached his knees, was armed and armored. His tiny body was covered by silver and green armor, and he carried miniature Gatling guns on his tiny limbs and bombs on his little back. The tiny weapons were designed after his future evolution, but due to Tesla's small size and poor capacity, the weapon was not very powerful. Tesla had previously walked in snowy areas when they went to see the Alps, so he wasn't completely lost. Unlike the other partners, Tesla had spent a significant amount of time studying about equipment and programming from Henry. He had matured from his weak and sensitive attitude, but he remained bashful and soft. He had also become close to Susie and had learned to dance.
Tesla was concerned about the fighting situation. He was the type of student who was completely prepared for a test but felt pressed until it was completed.
Tesla gulped, his gorgeous eyes fixed on his adversary. The terrain was quite difficult for him, especially given his armor. The armor was draining his energy, so he couldn't waste time if he wanted Henry to back him up. They'd agreed not to intervene today, and he didn't want to be the only one who relied on his partner for something simple.
Tesla used the interface to alter his footing so he could ski walk on the snow without sinking.
"I am ready. Relax, it is just a weak Digimon that is evil. Don't hold back and don't try to associate with him. He is your enemy, so end him quickly. Remember, he is a virus in the system." Because of such words, Tesla became more interested in it. Henry had miscalculated with his words, and his tiny heart began to beat in anticipation of the blood and screaming. Tesla felt nauseated at the prospect of data leaking over while his adversary died. He yelled a battle cry, pulling up and pausing over active imagination. "To victory and beyond," Tesla yelled as he moved towards his adversary, and the adversary began to move as well. Looking at Tesla approaching him, he couldn't help but giggle. He could smell his vulnerability, and based on the shape, he knew it was Terriermon.
Haha. I guess it's my lucky day. It's not every day that a delicious bunny jumps to my dinner table without a hunt, he murmured, staring down on him with no regard. This area served as his playground. He could readily function in this region.
"Oh, it's a tamer," exclaimed Gabuman when he spotted Henry. He had assumed it was a different Digimon, but the smell convinced him it was a human. The opponent opted to dash towards Tesla with the Ice Dash ability just as Tesla was approaching him with boosters. While rushing towards Tesla, the snow beneath him solidified. A hailstorm of bullets, Tesla latched onto his opponent and began firing while shifting to the side to avoid being hit. The adversary skated to the side, shooting blue flame balls towards Tesla. Tesla paused the bullets and began advancing towards the enemy, estimating the heat he had chosen to travel through. His body accelerated towards the foe and slammed into the flames. Gabuman was taken aback, but his horn was engulfed in flames and poised to strike him in the face, while Tesla reacted appropriately by using his ear to strike the horn with the spiky point while unleashing a heated air blast directly to the face. Bunny Rage Gabuman shouted in agony as he was driven back by the hit, his skin burned and burned by the hot air.
The damage was minor, but the next attack took its toll on him.
A hailstorm of bullets, Tesla emptied the clip into the foe from close range, causing damage to accumulate and causing him to bleed. His eyes were removed. Tornado Terrier Tesla paused as he noticed the opponent screaming in agony while charging up blue flames in his lips. Because of his hesitancy, he was hit by the flame ball and flung flying. The armor reduced the damage, but he could feel the heat and force behind it. The opponent roared and raced up to get him with a horn attack as they flew through the air.
I hate it when you get harmed. Remember that when you're fighting. You are the same to me as family. I'll forgive you for everything because I know you'll never make a mistake.
I believe in you, Tesla. Those words flashed across his thoughts as he considered giving up. It's for Henry. Tesla concentrated on the task at hand and let everything else fade away. Tornado Terrier this time. Tesla moved like a storm, directly avoiding the horn attack while his sharp ears sliced the enemy's throat. Tesla continued to revolve, and his opponent was ripped apart by the bladed end. It was the most heinous death. Tesla crashed on the ground unevenly. Tesla, don't look! Henry yelled, but Tesla had already taken in the scene. The opponent had been ripped open and his insides were leaking, as he was bleeding everywhere. The blood was all over his body. The scene paralyzed Tesla and caused him to lose consciousness. Henry chased him down and caught him. He was terrified that this would happen. Tesla's battles were always filled with blood and gore, but he was too terrified to subject him to it. Tesla was not to blame. He was merely a kid who was naturally sweet and attractive. It was his responsibility to get him used to it. In the wild, this Digimon would follow a stronger and more benevolent Digimon, only fighting on rare occasions. It was a battle species who despised fighting. Henry carried Tesla away after picking him up. He had won the battle, but his decision had been postponed until the day of departure. He had to demonstrate that Tesla was ready to embark on an adventure in the digital world, or he would be denied permission to accompany his crew. Tesla did not disappoint him. He was dissatisfied with himself.
He was saddened for Tesla. He should have performed better.
I should have resigned. Naruto did not force him to follow, but it was his option. Perhaps that was the incorrect decision. Henry reflected as he watched his buddy shake in his sleep. Don't worry, Tesla, you'll be fine. It's just a bad dream, so don't let it eat you up, Henry said quietly, not realizing Tesla had caught a glimpse of his face, giving him an extra shock.
The data was absorbed by Henry's equipment and fed to Tesla, who was unconscious at the time.
The group exited the testing room once the test was completed. Henry cradled his comatose partner while Takato and Arthur remained silent, as the partner's typical excitement had faded. I'm sorry, Naruto. I might not be able to come this week. Henry spoke up calmly, without making excuses or blaming anyone. He was to blame, and he needed to apologize for spreading false optimism. When Takato glanced at Arthur, the death scenario flashed across his memory. He wanted to say it as well, but he was embarrassed to admit such weakness. He simply sat motionless on the sofa in the room, while Arthur sat opposite him, his head resting against Takato. Rika had anticipated this, but the extent of the reaction was far worse. Luna couldn't figure out why Tesla was out when he wasn't hurt, or why Arthur seemed sad and depressed. Arthur was of a combat-oriented species, therefore he should be fine. Her reasoning was sound, but she overlooked the fact that the tamer's emotions also affected the Digimon partner. Takato's emotions were what made him feel weak, albeit he did feel terrible for going wild. You don't have to apologize. I'm doing something out of the ordinary, so problems were to be expected. I apologize that I didn't stop you from doing it, but I don't regret my decision. I trust you and your partners. This will help you grow faster because you are not like the others and do not require months of adjustment. I will not place a burden on your shoulders by requiring your presence, so go enjoy time with your spouse.
I know you'll be all right, and I'll always be available to help if you need it. Just remember, experiencing such a reaction is natural, and it will pass with time. Naruto grabbed both of the boys in his arms and spoke to them about the problem. He had faith that they would make it, and if they didn't in a week, it was no big deal.
He would still accompany Rika, and the lads might meet them later. Takato asked as he cradled Arthur's head, "Is it normal to feel bad? I'm disgusted by what happened, even though he was evil and wanted to kill me." His tone was quiet and unsure.
He didn't want to talk about it, but they were all his pals. He needed to inform them and solicit their feedback, perhaps it would be beneficial. He was particularly eager to hear from Naruto. He was the one who inspired him to walk confidently until today.
Young sat at the table while she awaited the findings. She had witnessed all of the wars. The outcome of the battle was predictable, but the rest was unknown before it occurred. Rika acted just as she expected. Naruto remained cool as usual and quickly solved Asura's predicament. The reaction was not horrible because Candlemen were weak on the emotional scale and the personality was modeled on Naruto. Takato and Arthur's reactions were expected because the youngster was very pure and Arthur was a Guilman, and the Digimon needed more time before fighting. It has a habit of getting out of hand. Henry was amazing, but because his partner was mild, he was also placed on pause. Two of the team members now had 2 days to prove themselves worthy or face another test the following week. In these situations, she lacked expertise, although Young would have attempted, but Naruto handled it and kept an eye on them to see if her assistance was needed. She had the feeling, as she always did, that his back was quite broad and that he was an experienced leader. It's perfectly normal. People will tell you what they would do in this or that situation, but when the time comes, the majority of them will back down. Why do you think it takes most people at least a month to pass the test? It's due to the psychological impact of these confrontations. Because Digimon are like humans in that they have both good and terrible traits, it is understandable that you would feel bad about murdering them. Do you not feel uneasy if someone screamed in anguish close to you? You do it even if you knew they were harmful. It's in our nature. You will get over such sensations with time, but you must maintain them or you will wind up on the other extreme. The only time someone does not feel horrible is when they have been schooled to do so or when there is actual hostility involved. Except for you, we've all had some training in this area.
What solutions do you have for Arthur's problem, Young? Naruto stated carefully and softly to Takato that this was a delicate situation before turning to Young for a solution to Arthur's berserk condition.
Young was so engrossed in the conversation that she was taken aback when he yelled out. Oh, Arthur's problem. Guilman is a hunter and predator, so all he needs is experience and proper supervision to keep his wild tendencies in check. We can set up a region where he can hunt small data animals. Because it was his first time, his reaction was exaggerated. Young swiftly gathered herself and responded calmly while focusing on things she could help with soon. Naruto had asked, and Takato would respond. As you can see, it's not your fault. You were too thrilled and missed something. It happens, and now you can remedy it. In addition, I don't detect any bite marks on your body. Arthur did good, and you were outstanding. Naruto approached the pair, placing his palm on their heads.
In a way, he could have avoided everything but Tesla, but even he had been so preoccupied with other things that he had overlooked the minor details.
He had assumed Takato would take care of it, but the young man despised instincts and killing. Even I had a weak stomach the first time I saw it, so it is normal. Henry offered to assist his pal. Tesla needed his assistance, but he was sleeping for the time being so he could concentrate on his best friend. He was the type of person who recognized that well-placed comments would allow Takato easily climb out of a rut. You're a wuss, Takato. However, it is typical for people to have unpleasant reactions to killing, and this varies. Just be glad you didn't laugh like a lunatic, or you'd be locked away like Hisoka. Rika also pitched in, though not without insulting him and reminding him of the poor outcomes. Takato took in their remarks while looking at the floor. Naruto's hand on his head, which sent an energy wave, aided him in thinking clearly. He'd been thinking too arrogantly, as if his failure meant he was nothing. Because of his inadequacy, he was nothing. Seriously, this was why he despised feeling down. Your mind narrowed and you began to think dumb thoughts. He wasn't a loser or a wimp. He was simply taking part in something extraordinary with a significant risk of failure. Because of his arrogance and eagerness, he had ignored some details. All he had to do was solve those issues, and he'd be off on an adventure with his companions. If he truly failed, it would be a regret he would never forget. Did you understand, Arthur? We were not weak, we were simply foolish. Arthur glanced at him, and he could feel Takato's emotions mounting via the relationship. This caused his bad thinking to vanish. He despised the sensation of negativity. He couldn't do anything since his heart was hurting. Were you stupid, Takato-man? Yes, we should have asked for assistance, but we were so focused on training that we forgot to prepare for this test. Takato-man. You're stupid because of that. Ha ha ha, he's not mistaken. Don't attempt to blame it on Arthur. It's all on you. Naruto couldn't help but laugh, and everyone else did as well. It was contagious laughing that helped the gloomy souls sleep. Thank you very much, I feel much better now. But I'll need some time before we can celebrate. Don't worry. No one wants your sad face at the party. We'll move it to the digital world, so prepare your ass before I kick it. Rika responded by squeezing his left shoulder. It stung, and she did it on purpose to cause them anxiety. I will keep that in mind, Miss Uzumaki. Takato and Arthur moved away as Rika slid on those words and felt her expression soften. She had no intention of harming him, therefore his escape was irrelevant. He was probably planning to go somewhere alone with Arthur and chat about life, possibly include Yuri in that conversation. What about you, Henry? Naruto inquired as he approached his little companion, sending a surge of golden chakra through them. He could see Tesla was having dreams, and Henry was unhappy. He retained his empath skill, and his chakra still had the power of hope and positivity. It made things like this much simpler to handle, especially since he had worked hard to improve on it. It now assists people in thinking rationally and eradicating their harmful thoughts.
I was just thinking about talking to him and asking Susie to help. Tesla is a child that requires emotional care to recover from this traumatic experience. While rubbing Tesla's head, Henry responded. He did, however, appear to be sleeping better lately.
Tesla's reaction was so strong because he saw the true face of Black Gabuman. To assist Tesla, please play with him in a flower garden or with other Digimon of a similar type. He may adore technology, but nature will always be his home. Young stepped in because Henry seemed to have missed it. He had been preoccupied with the future and had missed the now. In the current, Tesla would prefer natural areas than artificial ones. He may not speak about it in order to appear calm and smart. Well, that's a good plan, but I'll bring Carrie along to increase my chances. Does that sound right? Henry was relieved that it wasn't as severe as he had anticipated, but he was also disappointed that he had missed such a thing. He had also overlooked Tesla's fondness for the outdoors and had almost considered bringing him to the lab for a good time. It was a good thing he had other people to remind him of such things because he did forget about them at times. Since Tesla entered his life, he had been lost in the future. Thank you. I'll leave and see you later. Henry said his goodbyes to the others and then left. Will you continue, Naruto? Young sought clarification because she was unsure of his plans now that half of the crew would be rendered ineffective. We will continue and go together. Trust us, we'll get through it quickly. We aspire to go above and beyond everyone, therefore these minor setbacks will not deter us. Regardless, you did an outstanding job. Your decisions and recommendations have greatly impressed me. You really astonish me today with all of this. Naruto responded before expressing his admiration for her effort. She had to come up with new ideas for everyone and put them to the test, which was not an easy process. I was just doing my job. Young was pleased by his remarks, although she felt they were ordinary.
You performed better than others, and you did not exhibit inappropriate emotions. You are a nice guy and a great helper. I eagerly await your support in the digital world. To express his gratitude, Naruto seized her hand and tugged her into a hug.
Young felt great in his arms, it was beneficial to both of them. They were on even better terms now that she had been assigned to them. They'd met outside during one of their group outings earlier in the week.
Naruto had always been sensitive, thus hugging was a practice that helped train Rika to accept him displaying compassion to others.
He hadn't done anything noteworthy in front of Rika or Carrie. Since Carrie was still off limits, he just held them, sat them on his lap, or kissed Rika. Naruto never broke his pledges unintentionally, which made Carrie feel better. If he did breach it, he would become a slave because Carrie despised him. Breaking an oath here meant only bad things because Tai was the most important person in her life and Naruto was his friend. Returning to Rika, she did have some difficulties at first. She used to pout and even become quite touchy with him or have mood swings, but now she didn't mind seeing him hug other girls. She had just remembered that he was like that from time to time. That was correct, but the hug lasted longer than normal. Rika sneezed. Naruto, please. Young mumbled in an ashamed tone, having forgotten about Rika for a brief while. She could tell that her feelings for Naruto had grown stronger, and his hugs were always quite pleasant.
He was a person who could be hugged. Oh, I thought you wanted something more. Naruto chuckled as he released Go and returned to Rika's side, cuddling her to calm her down.
Relationships were difficult, and everyone had to pitch in to make it work. When she saw them like that, Young remembered that what she felt was a transient dream. Such solutions should not be considered because they would result in a negative outcome.
Rika's family may force her to disappear. That was an idea, but her mind quickly reminded her that Naruto and his 4 maids were also with Carrie. It was common knowledge that had spread across the country and around the world.
People who had previously been unaware of Naruto were suddenly aware of him for entirely unexpected reasons. He was the young guy who ventured to form a harem with 2 girls from powerful clans equivalent to his own, and he had 4 maids who were stronger than him and even their Digimon. People referred to him as deranged or a maniac. People referred to him as a mad lad. People dubbed him a deviant and a manwhore for sleeping around so openly. Many people were impressed, many were jealous, and some despised him even more for destroying their idols with his wicked behavior. With so many girls, plans to join this gang had begun. If he was going to include this man, he may as well include more later. People thought they could take advantage of his warped urges for their own gain. Perhaps we can. Young was thinking along those lines when he was interrupted. She was also relying on rumors, as Naruto had not spoken about it. Perhaps he liked the other girls as well. The others, not strangers, were close to him. They're all better than me. It's preferable to look at my level before looking at the heavens and embarrassing myself. To be continued.
That's it for this podcast. Thank you for listening to this video. I hope you did enjoy this particular story, and if you did, like, share, and subscribe for more. And thank you all for your help and support, and have a great day.